All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got episode 8 of the Cutting Edge podcast. We have an esteemed list of guests with us today. I think I am certainly the dumbest one in the room today.
I was going to say, you're not talking about me when you're talking about esteemed, so.
You are the birthday boy today. Oh. We need to sing happy birthday to Tyler.
No.
No, okay, we'll do that after the recording.
Thank you.
But for those of you on LinkedIn, I think you need to send him a message and tell him happy birthday.
Okay. Thanks.
So the topic for today is OrthoLoneStar, first orthopedic supergroup in Texas. So we have a number of senior leadership from OrthoLoneStar joining us today. Before we get started, I have to do my usual shout outs for a number of reasons. So a few mentions for us. TexAssist Surgical Assist Staffing, thanks for supporting this podcast. Carrington Advisors, Tyler Talman's group, Moonshot Marketing Group, and Jen Eaton, who have helped us manage our social media and our website. And then we ask that you connect with us on all of our social media channels. So Facebook, LinkedIn, you find us with the Cutting Edge Podcast. Connect with us on Twitter, TCE MedPod. Connect with us on Instagram, the Cutting Edge Pod, although that doesn't seem to be working too well lately. So I'm not sure we're going to keep going with that one. But also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's awesome to be able to not just listen to the audio, but watch the video too. There's a lot that can be learned from the interaction amongst guests when you watch the video. So with that being said, let's jump right in, and we're going to do introductions. We're going to start over here to my left. Start with my co-host, Tyler Talman. Tyler is one of the principals with Carrington Advisors. He's really been one of the principal reasons that I started this podcast. Been great support in this whole process, and he represents the average Joe. So Tyler is not a healthcare guy.
You're starting to become one, though. This is episode number 8, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have a master's degree shortly.
Right? You get that from the Apple Jacks box?
No, Wheaties.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. To the right of Tyler, we've got Adam Maurer. Adam, share with us your formal title with OrthoLoneStar.
The Chief Operating Officer.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
To my right, Tracy Dean.
Yes. Vice President of Revenue.
Vice President of Revenue, Texas Orthopedic Associates, correct?
OLS. I'm at Texas Orthopedics, but yes, I work for OLS. Yeah.
Okay. And then Mr. Rick Weymier, Chief Administrative Officer with
the Carrell Clinic.
The Carrell Clinic. And
Carrell Clinic and I are both the same age, 100 years.
Well, we know that's up for debate.
That's right.
That's up for debate. But we'll leave that for another day. That's a whole other episode to talk about Rick's experience and age.
Yeah, well, we had that argument last time, right?
Yeah, that's probably something we could talk about every time, actually,
That's
every
right.
time you come on the show.
It never gets too old to talk about.
No, I'm going to have to start charging you every time you come on from here on out. I mean, I'm giving you lots of press.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit in terms of background. Not all of our listeners listen to all of our shows. We're going to start with Adam. So Adam, just share a little bit about your professional background and how you arrived on the doorstep of OLS.
Awesome, thanks. So I am a CPA by training, and all roads eventually probably lead back to money, but fortunately that's not the only case for OrthoLoneStar. I worked up through Deloitte, spent time southeastern United States, moved up through a couple of organizations and helped with consolidations, implementation of best practices, overall systems integrations. And that led to a short stint in a consulting career, and that was focused on strategy and culture. I came to realize that organizations like ourselves or like small organizations or all, to me, mergers and integrations succeed or fail based on culture. So I had the opportunity to be introduced to the folks at OrthoLoneStar long after these guys worked really hard to put it together, and came on board just before we launched and went live with the overall objective of helping to make the merger itself be a success, achieve some of the goals laid out by the founding members and the board. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about what those goals are later. Yeah. But really there to think about, from a strategic perspective, how do we make the systems work? the processes work, and most importantly, the people work. And ultimately, if we do that right, we're going to be fine.
Gotcha. So is this your first formal position in healthcare? Have you worked with healthcare companies in the past?
I
as part of
have,
your background?
yeah. So one of the kind of merger integration roll-ups that I was with was a medical physics company. So if you're familiar with cancer treatment, oftentimes it's either going to be drugs, it's going to be surgery, or it's going to be radiation therapy. So on the radiation therapy side, they've got a medical physicist that will help with the calculation of dosage, with the application of the linear accelerator, with some of the machine maintenance, commissioning for the multi-million-dollar cancer setups. So we created a medical physics outsourcing company so that we could share personnel between sites, so that we could bring expertise specifically to a hospital, so that we could kind of cover multiple areas, especially around the explosion of LINACs. So that was Global Physics Solutions, which we eventually sold to Landauer Medical Physics. You know Landauer because they're the ones that give you the little badge that you wear that covers radiation, kind of a science tech firm. I left Global Physics shortly after we sold to Landauer and worked with a few medical firms and ended up running a urology group. And it was an early kind of integrated group in terms of they offered cancer treatment. Prostate cancer is often treated with radiation therapy in addition to some chemo. It's both a surgical and in-office specialty, a lot like orthopedics. So that was my last stop before doing some of the culture work, and then was happy to get back into orthopedics.
Adam, I perked up when I know you're a COO, but you said that you were a CPA by trade. And I was like, I got to hear this because I don't know very many CPAs that end up as COOs. So really interesting stuff, and it makes great sense with your Deloitte experience and on the way through.
They said I was a very outgoing CPA because
okay.
when I talk to you, instead of looking at my own shoes, I look at yours.
Good, Adam. I don't know very many outgoing CPAs either, so that's.
He just definitely not fit the mold at all.
That's interesting. Well, Tracy, good time to transition to you. So share a little bit about your professional background and what's brought you to OrthoLoneStar.
I've only been doing this for a couple of days, and this is how I got. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I started. I know we're like babies.
Yeah.
So I actually started off managing my own practice for a long time, and I don't know, probably about 14, 15 years ago, somehow I just kind of transitioned to revenue, and I've never left there. And I actually enjoy it. So, 20 plus years career in medical, and just spent the past 15 taking care of revenue. And OLS, I don't know. I just kind of ended up here. I went to TOA to manage their revenue when somebody retired. I was kind of looking for a home. And I knew at some point in time, OLS is going to need to bring up a medical service organization. And so it was kind of a long-term career move for me. And here we are. It's coming to fruition in a couple of months. And so I'm excited.
So are you part accountant?
No, I definitely do not want. I am 100% revenue, back end collections from insurance,
Okay.
AR, patient AR. Do not ask me to. I don't even reconcile my own checkbook. So don't ask me to reconcile your books in any form or fashion. So yeah.
That's why they make QuickBooks.
That's true. I probably should use that too,
They download it right out of your checking account.
I can use QuickBooks. I actually can do those things. I just don't personally do them at home, CJ.
Not to get anybody in trouble, but one of Rick's first calls to me was, we need to find a revenue cycle person, and her name's Tracy Dean. It's like, well, that's not really finding one, but I recommend you call her. And so she had a target on her back to be our guru pretty much as soon as we got up and running.
I'm excited about it. I think, I've been part of a group before who tried to do exactly what OLS is doing, OrthoLoneStar is doing. So for me, it's exciting times. I like big picture, right? I like to see the overall processes, and I think that this is just I think we'll look up 6 months from now, and we're gonna all go look at this really cool thing we've done, especially from a revenue standpoint, just to kind of merge 6 divisions, business offices into one it's
a monster lift.
Wow. It really is. And I don't sleep at night sometimes, but that's okay because it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah. So, obviously you're in orthopedics. You talk a lot about orthopedics experience. Do you have other specialty experience prior to orthopedics, or has that really been your home, for the duration of your career?
No, my first practice was physical medicine and rehab, and then I've done some pain management, internal medicine. So yeah, a couple different things.
Okay, awesome. Rick,
What do you want to know?
well, on prior episodes we talked about Carrell Clinic, right? And the fact that Carrell Clinic is really one of the anchors to the group, and it's the oldest practice west of the Mississippi, correct?
Correct.
So, just give the audience a brief rundown. You've been around
7 years last Monday.
at Carrell Clinic.
Amazing. Isn't
That's
it?
that's got to be a record.
It
Close
does.
to it.
By twice.
That's pretty impressive. What about prior to Carrell Clinic? I mean, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you've, as conversations we've had, you bounced in and out of practice management, right?
Yes, I actually got started back in 1984, and from 1984 all the way to early 2000s, it was mostly multi-specialty and primary care. And a lot of my early career, I was involved in a lot of the when we were in the capitated world, and a lot of things were on cost control and utilization management. And I worked for several of the groups where the primary care physician actually kind of owned the insurance product and was the gatekeeper, and then they contracted with specialty physicians. And you see that sort of coming, it's like deja vu all over again. You see a lot of the ACOs, the Catalysts and the Jeffersons out there where they now have large primary care bases, and a lot of the carriers are going to them and looking back to the primary care physician to kind of manage the entire spectrum of cost. I got into orthopedics, incidentally, like 1 year before I met Tracy, because I came to work for MetroCrest Orthopedics, which was a small group in Carrington, and Tracy came in to work with our surgery center, and then we needed to do some changes in our revenue cycle team, so Tracy moved over to the physician side. So, but ever since the early 2000s, it's been orthopedics. What I've tended to do in the past is look for opportunities where the practices could use a little jump start, get back to where they needed to do, and get themselves back on track. So I do that for a couple of years and get them where they needed to be, and then I would go into consulting for a couple of years, and kind of bouncing back in between. Because frankly, I enjoyed the travel. I enjoyed going to different projects and doing different things. And then after 2 years on the road, spend 2 years just in one place. So, but when I came
So how have you lasted 7 years at Carrell Clinic if that's your history? They must really be paying you good, or you must really like being home now at this point.
Well, sometimes you just find that magic spot where you click with the doctors. And, the Carrell Clinic, like all practices around, they want to make the right amount of money to run their business and that sort of thing. But, not only the Carrell Clinic, but also OrthoLoneStar, they've got a really good board of directors. The founding members have 2 physicians. And there's a lot of talk about let's do the right thing for the patient, let's provide value, let's demonstrate to the world that we're high quality, high moral group of people to work with. So, I've lasted a long time because I think I've been able to develop a relationship with the physicians that I work with where we both do what we do well, and we respect what each other does, and we appreciate what each of us brings to the practice. So, when you find a place where you can sort of call home, there's less desire to try something else.
Cool. Well, very curious how this whole idea of OrthoLoneStar came about. It seems like there's been a lot of chatter about OrthoLoneStar as an organization in the DFW orthopedics market for several years. I've been around since 2013. I feel like it's literally 2017, 2018 is maybe when we got first murmurs of what's going on. And it's a little bit surprising that something hasn't happened earlier than that in Texas. So kind of tell us the origins of OrthoLoneStar and where that started.
Well, the unique thing about Texas, and maybe in some other states too, is Texas has a very, very strong network of orthopedic administrators. And it kind of goes back to the grandfather of it all. There's a gentleman in Houston named Michael Berkowitz, who was with his practice for many, many years, and he started T-Bones, which is the name of our industry organization, 25 years ago. So through that time, it's just kind of evolved and evolved. And I would say as long as 10 years ago, the administrators, a certain group of administrators started talking about, we value our independence. We don't want to work for a hospital. We don't want to do private equity. We want to be an independent group, but we also recognize that the small group practice faces a lot more challenges than, the hospital has money and, private equity has money, but, independent physicians just have to rely on providing services and getting reimbursed for their services. So probably 5 years ago, the administrators on their own started getting together, and we even brought some consultants in, and we had meetings and we talked about it. How can we get going on it? Our physicians knew that we were talking, but we really couldn't get too jazzed about it at the time because they're focusing on their practice, and putting this thing together is a lot of work and takes away from my time, and I have enough to do taking care of my patients. Well, sometimes it's just serendipity, where we all belong to another industry organization called the Ortho Forum. And it just so happened that 4 of the 6 original practices that we were all talking about were all having a drink at the Ortho Forum, and the lead doc in each one of the groups were all in residency together at UT Southwestern. Wow. And they said, wow, our administrator's been talking about this, let's do it. And as soon as you get the doctor buy-in, it took off.
Oh, yeah, as soon as it became their idea, right?
Yep.
I mean, what are the chances of that all 4 of them are in residency together at UT Southwestern at the same time with those 4 big groups?
Right.
That's just God's plan is what it sounds like to me.
Yep. So, and you get the doctors bought in. And the other thing that's really kind of cool about it was funny going to the first couple of board meetings because there was a lot of people bragging about my group is great and I'm the best. And, they're all trying to, jockey for position of the herd, who's going to be the alpha in this herd. And we had a really good facilitator on the outside that had gone through about 20 of these in the past. So he just let us vent and do our thing. And then they naturally just sort of came around to what's the big picture. And we have 10 orthopedic surgeons on the board that put the big picture first over their individual. And they have enough control over their groups to keep them on track to say, it's not about tomorrow, it's not about next year, it's about what do we want to be 10 years from now. So very solid, very steady, very methodical. And then we hope that we represent the blueprint so that other physicians in Texas who want to maintain their independence and be able to be competitive would consider OrthoLoneStar as an option for their practices.
So it's interesting. You mentioned 20 prior groups that have gone through this similar process nationwide, right? Yep. So I think of Ortho Carolina. I've heard Ortho Indy. I've heard Ortho Tennessee. How many of those groups are still together? I mean, what's the actual true, success rate versus divorce rate in this type of situation? And what do you think is leading to people actually making it?
I do think, and I don't know the exact way to answer it because I can't say 50% are, 75% are, but my general sense is that the vast majority of them are still going strong, but they're not all the same size. I mean, some of them grew very fast, and some of the peripheral ones were like, well, I don't like standardization, or I don't want to be doing I want to go back to my own practice. So you've seen some get very big and then shrink back a little bit. But I would say that the core of all of these other groups, because the consultant we brought in, our physicians thought, okay, let's get this together. We'll get an operating agreement, and then 6 weeks from now we'll be OrthoLoneStar. And he's like, no, it's going to take you 2 years. Well, it's very hard to get physicians to take that long of a look on a project. but he did a really good job of shepherding us through it. So if you don't rush it and you take the time and you understand it's going to take 2 years. And then the other thing is some of these places just throw it together. We put $2.5 million into this thing.
Wow.
So when you have money in the game, your very own money, no borrowed, everybody wrote a check, you have an incentive to make it work.
Right. Well, and you know, one of the things, Adam, you've joined the team partly because of your background in managing corporate culture and making sure that is that's central to the success of the company. So we're dealing, yes, we're all in Texas, but we know that there's huge variance from the subculture of East Texas to the subculture of North Texas to the subculture of Central and Southeast Texas, right? So Houston, Austin, Dallas, Tyler. What's been the key so far to be able to manage all of those different subcultures and be able to get them to buy into a central story or a central way of doing things?
Yeah, I think Rick spoke to it a little bit, and especially when you go back to our founding story, which is a little apocryphal, but it's interesting, right? So these 4 guys that all went to the residency program together, it might not have been divine fate. They might have been recruiting the same kind of person. And that's somebody that is selfless, that cares about building a team, that is focused on doing things for the right reasons. And I think that reflects in how we created OrthoLoneStar and what it stands for. So when we think about culture, we want to talk about like kind of our motivations, our values, and what causes us to make decisions we do, and then the behaviors and how we evidence that. And so despite the regional differences in the way we might say hi to each other or take someone out to lunch, as long as we align around those same values, then it tends to be successful. So quality and value in terms of doing the right thing by the patient was the first thing they looked at. And so it wasn't just 6 groups that like each other. We pulled the data that we had available and we went to outside sources for data, and we looked at the Medicare data, and we were able to prove that our groups were operating at an 80% or higher quality litmus test. So there was a fit there for the way that we practice medicine and what was important to the physicians in terms of outcomes. So that was an important part of it. We talk about accessibility, being there and being available to the communities that we serve, to the employees. And then we talk about courage. And I think that there is a lot of courage that it takes to kind of throw your lot in with people that you haven't been with for so long. But it also takes courage to stand up and say, this is going to be a long process. This is going to be an investment. We're going to try something new for Texas. It has worked in Philadelphia and it's worked in Baltimore, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in Texas. I think you guys probably see that. It's just a more fragmented medical market in general. And there's a very unique, there is no single overriding state player, right? I mean, Houston has a much different system set up than Dallas does, or wherever the case may be. So I think that the fact that we were able to align around values and coming together for the same reason, independence, and then doing things for the right outcome, that seems to be why the culture has worked. And then you layer on the expertise of the Ricks. There's 6 successful groups coming together. This wasn't a defensive move. It was an offensive move. So it's not like somebody was trying to be saved from impending ruin. So they're well-run practices with well-run, well-thought-through objectives, processes. Bringing that into the fold helped a lot. And then finally, this is where the consultant, I think, paid a lot of dividends, just setting up up front the right governance structure and the right decision-making. Then we were fortunate enough that we have a board and we have a wide open invite to all of our partners, to all of our physicians to come to anything.
That's critical.
To be included in the decision-making. And then we have a very clear set of rules around the actual decision implementation. And so it makes my job easier because, this isn't suits running the corporation and trying to deliver returns. This is physician-led healthcare, where we're there to try to help make sure that the things that are done efficiently and well.
Interesting. One of the things that I think about as a business person, Tracy, is when you're blending these 6 practices together, you have regional nuances to employers, payer mix, from a revenue standpoint, what's been fundamentally the biggest surprise as you worked in this role to get everybody on the same page? There's got to be some things that have just jumped out at you going, man, I never expected that, or how do we manage this?
Well, we just went live on April 1st with the consolidated 10. So I don't think we really know all aspects of that just yet. But I think as we've been on Athena since last summer, I think it's just being open to everybody's approach, right? And everybody brings something different to the table. I think the payer part of it will just continue over the next few months to see. We'll have to see what that looks like, because we haven't really had a lot of claims data and things like that.
Sure.
But I like the approach of just having, like Adam said, we were all really well-ran practices, but there's always room for improvement and growth. And so I like when we have a weekly call and we kind of talk about, what are you seeing? How are you approaching this? And I think we get to take that into our MSO. We get to take everybody's experience and expertise. And we kind of started from a revenue standpoint. We've got our COOs meeting now on a weekly basis. So I don't know. I think that's just the story. We don't know the full story yet.
So, Rick, we've talked about, and you shared that one of the methods or one of the reasons for doing this is to create a single tax ID in an effort to make it easier to manage relationships with the payers. Help the audience understand kind of where you guys are with that, what you're hopeful to accomplish. If you've seen resistance because of the number of physicians you have in your group, would love to hear your perspective on that.
And that kind of follows on what Tracy just said about going live on our new tax ID on April 1st.
Okay, so that's...
Yeah, so, there was a bunch of things where we got on the same practice management system in July, and then we did benefits in the fall and retirement in January, and our contracts and reimbursement structure. It's been a challenging and interesting dynamic to work with the payers, because I do believe that they see some value in working with somebody that focuses on quality like we do, that's a statewide network, because, and I don't know what the number, 70 to 80% of the large corporations are self-funded, and they're looking for ways to lower their costs. And if you can find, and orthopedics, frankly, is one of the easiest of all specialties to specifically identify a service and set a price to it and carve it out.
As well as one of the primary cost drivers within the organization.
Yeah, it's a higher cost. So there's an opportunity. So I think that they view this as a potential to have a good partner to be able to sell a good product to their clients. On the flip side, they're a little bit concerned because, with our scope now, we do have a little bit more leverage. And what we did is, a lot of people thought we were doing it, just so that we could get better contracts and we could stick it to the insurance company. We actually took a very, very soft approach with the insurance company. And we basically told the insurance company, as we come together, we know that you need to learn to work with us. We need to learn to work with you. All we want to do during the first couple of years is none of our groups want to go backwards. We don't want you to use this as an opportunity to open up a contract and say, well, how much can we get them down? We basically said, let's learn how to work with each other. We will even have split fee schedules depending on Houston and Tyler. So we didn't even make it mandatory that everybody had to be on the same fee schedule. Nobody wanted to go backwards. Right. So most of our relationships with the insurance companies are now going to be for 2 years. And that will be kind of the getting to know each other. How are we working? You can appreciate their side is why would they cave into us and give us all kinds of extra money, and then we break up a year from now. So
Yeah.
they have to get ready to say, okay, we feel comfortable enough with OrthoLoneStar. They've demonstrated the results. It's okay to invest in them, because if we pay them a little bit more on a per unit basis, the episode of care will be less expensive, and our patients will be healthier, get back to work sooner, get back to what the life. All of us have in our motto, or our what's the word? Not motto.
Mission.
All of our mission is, in some way, getting you back to the life that you enjoyed before you were injured, and that's that's kind of the driving force behind us. So 2 to 3 years from now, maybe it'll be about value, maybe about managing care, and maybe we'll have opportunities to share savings with the insurance carriers. So I think there's a want on both sides, but we're kind of circling a little bit till we get to know each other.
So I find it interesting that you've had a select number of groups come together to form this initially. You've talked about the potential interest in growing and having other groups join you that have the same wants and beliefs to stay independent. How do your existing competitors in these large markets view you in the moment where they maybe weren't included in this or weren't invited to participate early on? I mean, have friends turned into foes? Have there been some feathers ruffled?
No, I think there are people out there that don't believe that 160 doctors can figure out a way to work with each other. I mean, they just don't. And that's reflective of what Adam said, is maybe they don't have the right culture within their own practice to see how they can work together. There have been other groups that were in the discussions at the beginning who chose to say, this is not for us right now. They are not. I think there's a lot of, there's probably some people out there that hope that we really do well so that we can potentially offer a solution to them. Adam probably feels it more than I do, so he can do. Why don't you tell them about the group in West Texas, without naming names, about how they kind of heard about us? And it kind of goes right into what.
I think it's fun because we're in Texas. That's fun.
Yeah.
Everything's bigger,
Yeah.
right? So we're six, but that's just scratching the surface of what we can be. And you can look at a map and see some pretty glaring geographic holes where we would love to be.
Yep.
Because we want to cover the entire state. We want to bring the level of care that we have. And so while there's a balance between the quality of the groups and making sure it's people that we want to work with that are like-minded, we also have business objectives that we would love to meet. And so one of the big holes that you see is Panhandle and up in that direction, in between here and there. And we received a call from a senior physician in one of the cities up there that said, I've seen what you're doing. I read the article in Becker's. We have a bunch of smaller groups, 2 or 3 guy groups, and we've all talked to each other. And we agree, independent physician-led medicine is how we want to practice. We'd love to just talk to you about what have you done and how are you doing it? And that's how every one of these conversations starts. Nobody's ever called and said, I want to join.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your experience and how's it worked out for you? And some of the questions you're asking, what was it like trying to get people from different geographies together, and how's it going speaking with the payers, and what are you working on? And so we're gonna have those meetings. We've had the conversations on phone calls, and says, well, that sounds interesting. Let's go sit around a table and talk about what it would look like and timetables. And fortunately, we've done it once now. It took us 2 years, so it shouldn't take 2 years to do it again. We're building a playbook. We're building a very repeatable process to understand how to onboard groups and bring people on and take care of employees. And I think that's one of the benefits that we have about it not being about the first bottom line dollar. Is
Sure.
It's never been about cutting headcount. It's never been about higher rates.
Right.
It's about setting ourselves up with a vehicle that we know can be successful and that we can do things we want within.
So how many employees are there in OrthoLoneStar at this point?
1,300.
Plus
Holy
the doctors.
smokes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's got to put you guys in the top 5
I think
5 to 8 largest orthopedic groups
I
in the country.
I think right now we're the 3rd or 4th largest orthopedic group in the United States. in terms of physicians.
And you want to skinny down the definition a little bit. So,
Yeah.
take out multi-specialty groups, take out
Right.
hospital-owned groups. When you just talk about independent orthopedic physician groups, we're currently 3rd or 4th in the country.
I love what he talked about with scalability and having a playbook. I think it's a huge mistake that business owners make oftentimes is they're really good at going out and selling their value proposition, but they don't have a way to scale because they don't have a playbook. They don't have that repeatable process that you have to be successful. And so it's great to hear things like culture and all of that, and it's also great to hear this idea that we're going to put a process in place that we can repeat over and over and over again. And speed's important, but accuracy is also pretty important too. So that was interesting.
So, we've talked about physician care, but are there other aspects? You spoke to the MSO being a big part of this. Are there other segments of this business of ancillary services that you guys see as being able to develop that can ultimately enhance service and make it easier for the patient to get care delivered to them, but also enhance the bottom line for the member physicians?
Tracy?
Yeah, I mean, we do actually have a whole little roadmap of things we want to do. And I think they're being very strategic. We had a partner meeting at TOA a couple of weeks ago, and one of the doctors said, we really are looking long term. We want to make sure that 10 years from now, you guys have something that we've built and it's sustainable. And so, yeah, we want to look at, all aspects of not only revenue, but we do HR, we're going to do IT, we're going to look at all of that stuff. But, can we actually turn our MSO into something that we can offer to doctors outside of OLS, So can we produce a product that, and the numbers are great and they look good, that somebody would have want to come in and pay us to do that for them? So that's kind of, one of my doctors said, we really need to start thinking about this as a business. And I do think that that's important. And especially to hear him say that, because, he
refreshing.
Up until now, I've kind of been a little bit of a culture shock for them because I have a completely different mentality. And, he said a few weeks ago, he literally in the middle of a meeting, he said, he told all the other partners, we need to run this like a business. We cannot run this like a medical practice and expect that we're going to be able to keep the doors open long term, because healthcare has changed and we have to change with it and evolve. And if we don't, we will not be able to continue to do this.
So did I hear that correctly, that it's possible that you guys are doing something that is so unique that you can create your own proprietary, I think I'm hearing software, that you might be able to outsource? Is that what I heard?
Not really software, but we want to be able to offer revenue to other providers outside of OLS. So we want to create this MSO that, we can say, this is how much we can bring this in. We can take over managing your revenue for you, and we can do it for X amount of dollars and things like that.
We've identified probably at least 15 different vertical integration opportunities. And I said, well, that's too many. So let's pick the top 3, right? So the first 3 things that we really want to focus on, and this is internal to OLS, is we really like to understand the process behind durable medical equipment. The pricing of it is opaque. The getting patients into the right gear can be difficult. And we think that there's an opportunity for us to use our collective expertise to try to, again, meet that mission where we're matching quality and value. So DME is one. Another one that I think is big in Texas right now, and you'll hear a lot about, is just the site of service differential between hospitals and surgery centers. So we have an opportunity to participate in the development of surgery centers and make sure that the right cases are done at the right location. There are certain cases that don't need to necessarily be in a hospital. That can be done more efficiently and with equal or higher quality in a surgical center setting. So that's a place where we think that we can bring value in and kind of lend our expertise. But the number one, and the one I'm most excited about, Tyler, it's probably been perfected more in your field than anywhere else, is just utilizing and understanding data and algorithms to come up with the most efficient and effective path for patient outcomes and for treatment. So we're coming at it from the guise of bundling procedures, what Rick talked about. If a total knee replacement costs X dollars, but that X dollars has to cover if you mess it up and you re-break the knee and you have to go back in, or it covers an implant that's twice as expensive as it needs to be, or it covers an infection and a readmission to the hospital. Well, we're going to do it without the infection because we have protocols to fix that, and we're going to do it with the right implant for the right person. So it's going to cost us X minus Y. So rather than that be the traditional fee-for-service model, why can't we offer a bundled price that represents a savings for the ultimate payer? In most cases, it's going to be a large employer, and provides a better experience for the patient. And there's data to do that. And that's been one of my biggest surprises with the payers or with the administrators. They don't seem to be set up or equipped for that yet. And that's what we're building towards. So that's one thing I'm super excited about.
You think there's AI that exists? Or do you think there's an
it's
opportunity
big data.
to develop
AI?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking him.
Oh, I'm asking you.
So what I was referring to, so I think when you started talking about algorithms and all of that, you're talking more of the investment management side, basically how everything has changed on Wall Street and how really it's impacted our markets. But I was thinking about it more from a business standpoint that, you know, a lot of what we do is figuring out ways to help business owners integrate all of these information systems they have, because even in our space, it's unbelievable how many CRMs there are and how many different places you can go get data. Can we just get one tool that'll do all of that for us and walk and talk the same way? And, you know, I think in any industry, that is the Bentley.
It's a holy grail.
That's the holy grail. And so we're seeing a lot of advancement in our space on the financial side of the world, but it's also more fascinating to me to see it coming together in the medical field. I mean, even some of our guests, the stuff that I'm learning on these podcasts and what we're doing with robots and robotics, I mean, it's incredible. It really is. So I don't know.
And I'm
I don't
super
know.
interested in
He's
the big
asking
data
artificial
aspect of it.
intelligence. I mean, I really don't want anybody to take my job. Per se. I need a role.
So, question for me, you know, centers of excellence exist in other surgical specialties, bariatrics as one. Do you think that this whole idea of using data and algorithms to drive better outcomes, that's a method of driving the creation of a centers of excellence in this instance?
Well, I think, you know, the tools that we're using out there are available to everybody. It's just how we're going to combine those tools, you know, our practice management system, our electronic medical record system, our patient intake process, whatever, and really fine tune that so that it becomes a turnkey operation. And I think where the differentiator will be is, frankly, it's a competitive world out there. And if we can do it right and we can demonstrate that we have the cost and the value and the quality, what if we become the go-to place in the state of Texas? You know, we all are in a competitive environment, and, you know, what if the payers, what if the employers, what if just the people say, you know what, if I'm going to get orthopedic care, it has to be with these guys. And it will give us a competitive advantage. And then it may make other groups that we can pick that offer the same culture and quality that we do, that say, I want to be a part of that.
Okay, so at what point are you going to be the official orthopedic provider of the Dallas Cowboys? Because then we know you made it.
No, you mean the Green Bay Packers? But no, it you know, there are variations in all businesses where, you know, there's good product, but there's different levels of perception and different levels of quality. And you guys all know that healthcare is one of the few businesses in the world where we have no ability to set our price. You know, it's dictated to us. It's basically take it or leave it. So we have to be able to do it in such a way that we can be successful in an environment where we have no ability to charge more for something that's better. You know what I mean? So
It's interesting.
it's
So you have to earn, basically what you're saying is you have to earn more business by delivering a better outcome for the same price as the guy that's really doing a terrible job, right? I mean, that's how you.
Well, right, because we all have the same contracts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, to just put it frankly, is if you all of our doctors have to be credentialed. They have to meet certain criteria. If you are the doctor, say 80% is the cutoff point, and if you're 80.000001 or 99.9999, we do not get any credit for the differentiation. That it's the same contract for everybody. As long as you're a C student, it doesn't matter if you're an A student. So what we have to do is we have to show why the A student adds more value. And one of our physicians is in a program with one of the larger employers in the DFW area, where he was recognized as one of the top 3 doctors in the DFW area for his specialty. If anybody from that employer goes to that doctor for the service, all of his co-pays, all of his co-insurance, and all of his deductibles are waived. But if they go to any other doctor in that same specialty, they've got to play by all the rules. So OrthoLoneStar needs to become that doctor for everybody.
Interesting. So we're approaching 45 minutes, and this has been a fantastic discussion to learn about, how you guys have formed, kind of where you're headed. My last question is, look at the next year to 2 years. What are you most excited about? I'm going to ask each of you to answer that from your particular perspective. So we'll start with you, Rick.
You all know that, I've been doing this for 40 some years. So I'm, on the tail end of all of this. And for me, I'm not going to say, to my grandkid on my knee, hey, look at this OrthoLoneStar thing. I did it. But no, not being facetious, it's kind of cool to create something. And what would be even cooler is if 5 years from now we don't go backwards, and we said we did it. And I think that's something that I'm more about intangible accomplishments now, rather than building my career or anything. But OrthoLoneStar has a chance of being something special.
Very cool. Tracy, how about you? What are you most excited about over the next year or two?
Honestly, it's really along the same lines as Rick. I mean, I just think when you look at what we have done and what we're going to accomplish, I mean, how many people can say that? And how many people can say you were a part of OrthoLoneStar? I mean, obviously for me, this is kind of where I want to finish my career. This is where I see myself. But I mean, it's an exciting time, and I like to be part of something like this. I mean, it's just a completely different being, part of this organization as opposed to managing your own practice or something like that. It's even though it's going to be crazy and it's going to be challenging, I think it's going to be fun times, and we'll have these experiences that nobody else can say. I mean, there's probably not a lot of other groups, obviously we've established that, but who can say, you were doing this for $150 and 270 providers? It's going to be fun.
Very neat. How about you, Adam? What are you most excited about over the next?
Not going last to answer the question.
You got nothing left to say now.
It's the first time the 3 of us have agreed on anything. Good job. We're ready to roll forward now. No,
I'm available. I'm available to consult.
We might need one after this. No,
it means a lot to me to hear the pride that they have when they're talking about OrthoLoneStar, and because I feel it too, and I think that that's what I'm going to definitely remember most of 5 years. But what I most look forward to is having that level of pride and ownership filter down and permeate to every employee in the organization. So I think right now it's it's a vision that's shared by some, but the huge opportunity we have is, let's say we've added enough groups and we're 2,000 or 2,500 employees, and every one of us thinks we're making that kind of a difference in patients' lives and in our communities and healthcare. That would be truly awesome. And I think that that's something that you can't get in a small private practice, that you can get in a group our size.
Do you think there's going to be a point in time in the near future where you're going to get all your employees together for the first time?
That would be a dream for sure.
My employees joke about that. They think that's they're like, hey, so can we have an OLS or OrthoLoneStar
Six
picnic?
Flags.
I'm like, we'll just have to rent out Six Flags. You know, I mean,
that would be crazy.
I do think it's kind of,
but it's not beyond the pale.
It's,
I mean,
it's right.
The hospitals do it. Insurance companies do it.
Right.
We should be able to do it.
It'll hold it easy.
Right. Well, you know, I think we have to take our excitement and how do you filter that down to the employees?
Yeah.
You know, how do you get them as jazzed about, I mean, again, I get kind of giddy about it. And sometimes I think my employees think, well, she's lost her mind, but you have to give them the message, right? You have to get them to buy into what we're selling. You want them to see the vision that we all see. And so for me, when I go to work every day, you know, I try to do it with a positive attitude because I want them to think, okay, like we're doing this. You know, I mean, to take people, for me, a lot of my employees have been there 15 to 25 years. They're very comfortable with their life. And so for me to walk in the door, and I'm definitely, you know, probably not what they expected. And then OrthoLoneStar to be coming up as well. It was a lot for them. And so they were just kind of like, I don't know what this means for me. Where do I see myself? So a lot of my day is spent really, you know, nurturing them and getting them to understand it and see the bigger picture.
What a huge part of trying to build a culture is getting your people to have as much passion about your mission as you do. And that is a trick. I don't know if anybody's quite figured it out. Lots of good books on it.
Yes.
But it is. That's how you really gain traction. And you can sense that, can't you, CJ, amongst
Man,
the group? There's a
so
deep
cool
passion about what you
There's
guys
an
do.
energy. To me, there's just an energy, right? I mean, it's very different than anything I've been around, to be quite honest with you. It's really neat.
Well, for like me bringing up the MSO, you know, we've got employees sitting all across Texas. And now they've gone from this individual group to this MSO. So they're going to work with people who they've never met. So how do we manage through their expectations? We're going to teach them to use Teams. We're going to teach them to video with their coworkers and things like that. And that's very foreign to them. You know, I'm going to learn to manage people remotely who don't sit in an office with me. Yeah. And so, you know, they're like, wait, you want me to use Teams?
Yeah,
and you want me to chat? And you want me to... They are.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to people being like this, and all of a sudden we got to make them go this way, right? I mean, that's
right. So, you know, Adam and I spend a lot, and Alicia, who's our CFO, we spend a lot of time talking about that. So as we get ready for this to come up, managing their expectations and again, just kind of getting them all on the same page.
Yeah. Because
we want them to have a good experience. So,
well, man, it's so blessed that you guys chose to come and be our guest today. This has been a great opportunity to learn about OLS and get to meet all of you and spend some time with you. Hopefully we get to do this again sometime in the near future. We'd love to have an update podcast to get an understanding of how things are going and learn more about the success that's happening and tell some more stories. So
we'd like that.
We can't thank everybody for taking the time to listen to us. You know, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of our social media channels, including Twitter. Send us your comments. Send us questions. We're here to engage. I know the team here at OrthoLoneStar would love to hear from you as well, especially others that are practicing orthopedics or other specialties across the country. So until next week, we appreciate you. Have a good day. See ya.